Hi, Aston here with another unboxing video. No, this isn't it. But this is a clue to who it is. This is the Probe sampler from 1970, I think it is, called Hang On With Care, one of the scariest covers of all time. And it featured bands like Steppenwolf, B.B. King, James Gang, Bush, Three Dog Night, and another band called Freedom. And there were two tracks on here, Frustrated Woman, which is 5 minutes long, and also Nobody, which was 4 minutes long. And they were some of my favourite tracks of this. And over time, I bought every album that was featured on this sampler, but I could never find the Freedom one. And then, thanks to those lovely people at Cherry Red Records, this was announced, which is the Freedom Complete Albums box set. And this is just fantastic. So before I waffle on and I'll summarise what I think of it, let's have a look inside the box. So this is the Freedom Born Again, the complete recordings 1967 to 1972 box set from Grapefruit Records, which is part of the Cherry Red group. And it's a 5 CD set. All the tracks are listed on the back. Clamshell box with a booklet, which I'll do last of all. And the 5 albums. The first one is the soundtrack, Nero Son Bianco, by the band as they were called, the Freedom then. And you can see from here there's absolutely extensive extra tracks from that particular one. Then the second album, where they were still moving between psychedelia and hard rock. Freedom, which is the first, this is the album where I heard the first tracks from the band, from the compilation, which I'll talk about in the main bit. And Through the Years, CD 4, and More Than a Word, which is CD 5. And the booklet, which is really good for a band of this stature, to be honest. Really good story. Obviously detailed print, lots of memorabilia and photographs from the period. Full story of the band, what was happening, lots of memorabilia from the film when they were called the Freedom. Goes through the whole story. Then you've got some tour stuff they did with Jethro Tull and Black Sabbath and Colosseum, etc. Again, more photographs of the albums themselves when they were on Probe Records, picture sleeves, and then the 2 albums they did for Vertigo. And then the track listings, and as I said at the start, there's lots of bonus tracks to the first album, lots of different versions, obviously, because it was a film soundtrack. And then there's a couple of extras on the next one, Disc 2, Freedom at Last, and a couple of single edits for the rest, and that's your lot. And then there's adverts for other box sets on the Grapefruit label at the back. So that is Freedom Born Again, the complete recordings, 1967 to 1972. So that's Freedom, the complete albums box set called Born Again, 1967 to 1972. What are they like? If you're into Humble Pie, bit of Spooky Tooth, bit of Keith Hartley Band, bit of Bad Company, bit of Free, that kind of rootsy, bluesy rock, then there's plenty to enjoy here. The first album, so many bands in that period were involved in Italian film producers doing soundtracks to films that were either had very limited release, which meant that their music was only available in certain territories. This happened to this band a lot. They were also connected to Procol Harum. In fact, they were behind the initial formation of Procol Harum, and it was when the 2 key members of the original band were shown the door because it wasn't felt it was going to work out. They were given a bit of money after causing a bit of fuss, and they formed this band called The Freedom. And it is Bobby Harrison on the drums, who'd been around for a long time and a fantastic player. And this band are just marvellous. So the first album, as I've said, was the soundtrack one, which has got lots of extra tracks, as you just saw when I went through the box. And the second one, which is called Freedom at Last, when they dropped the word "the" and became Freedom, is a kind of hybrid of the 60s and hard rock, where they were moving. The photo would suggest they were moving in the hard rock direction. but they hadn't quite got there, and it's okay. But it's the third album, the one from Probe Records, which they basically pushed as being their first album. Are you following? Which is my favourite out of this. It's a really, really hard rock album. As I said, you know, the kind of reference points to the 70s stuff. Think about, as I've said so many times when I do these reviews of bands like this, Hard Meat and all these kind of bands, that your money could only go so many places. You could probably afford to buy one album a month. And you've got all the big hitters like Yes, Genesis, Purple, you know, and all these other things. So a band called Freedom is like, and of course the distribution wasn't very good, but they were supporting Sabbath and Jethro Tull and all this, so they had the exposure. But again, it was down to probably the kids, because that's who we were, and the audience thinking, I can't afford that. I'm going to buy the next album by whoever it is instead. But Freedom has got some great tracks on it. You know, absolutely Dirty Water's got a great shuffle, great guitar solo. The title track, Pretty Woman, no, it's not that one. Dusty track. Some of these songs are really long as well. Great guitar workouts. Great, as I say, great vocals, real gritty bluesy vocals. And the fourth album, which is the first one for Vertigo, it's still kind of in that direction, but they were kind of tweaking their sound dial a little bit, but it's in a way that's just as good. There's only 3 tracks aside on the third album. I have to say the covers didn't help. Think about what cover design was like in 1970, 71. This is not going to jump out of the racks at you, was it? Nor was the last one really. But there's 3 tracks beside on this, and again, I'd say it's just a marginal notch down from the one I've just shown you. But again, imagine what it's like to be a band at this period. Your albums, they're good, you're getting good reviews, mostly, but they're not selling. You just keep ploughing ahead thinking, no, this is what we do, or do you tweak it? You start to think, it's not working, we need to do something else. And that's usually what happens. And then the fans that have just arrived will go, oh, we need to do something else. So the last album for Vertigo, which is called Is More Than a Word, had an even worse cover, with a quote on the front. Shorter songs, they diversified here. They got Going Down, which sounds like Led Zeppelin, but other stuff was kind of like they were trying different things out. And I think by this time they realised they weren't going to be able to set the world on fire. There's a song in there called Brain Box Jam, and it is an instrumental and it is a jam, and it's got some great playing on it. You can tell that the musicians were getting better at their craft as they went along. Just getting better and better. But the band called it a day, and the key people went off and formed Snafu, who were on the WWA label. In fact, WWA were involved in part of Freedom's history as well. But it's a great box set, and I've introduced a lot of early 70s rock bands that never saw the light of day properly, or you never even knew they existed, apart from things like on these kind of samplers, and you just never went any further because you couldn't find it. So now, in 2023, thanks to Grapefruit Records and Cherry Red, there's a little box that has their entire output in it, and a great booklet telling all that you need to know about the characters and the players and the story behind it and what happened to them. It's all in here. So I do recommend this, Grapefruit Records, Cherry Red. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for subscribing, becoming a YouTube member or a patron, or using the Ko-fi link to buy me a little coffee. Say thank you for, trying to entertain me in these things. But remember, music is the healer and the doctor. So take care, everybody. Keep spinning those discs, and I shall see you very, very soon.